Welcome, everyone. I'm Mike Brashazadeh.
And I'm Ashley Ward.
And you're listening to the What Matters podcast, and our mission
to spotlight top RIAs, wealth managers, and investment professionals who are redefining wealth management.
Join us as we dive into their journey, strategies, and insights.
Whether you're an investor or an inspiring pro, this is for you.
Get ready for impactful conversations on the What Matters podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the What Matters podcast, where we delve into conversations with individuals making a difference in the field of wealth management. I'm Mike Brashazadeh.
And I'm Ashley Ward.
Today we have a special guest joining us. He's a Chief Growth Officer for Strategic Blueprint in Atlanta, Georgia, and a 25-year veteran of the financial services industry. Please welcome Michael Bryan.
How are you?
Hey, Michael. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to having a conversation.
Well, let's dive right in. So, Michael, let's start by diving into your journey in the financial services industry. Can you share with us and our listeners the story behind your career within an RIA and really the experiences that led you to where you are today with Strategic Blueprint?
Sure. You know, it's interesting, and I love this part of your podcast because I find that people in the financial services industry typically didn't dream when they were 9 years old of saying, how can I become a financial advisor? Or how can I be a consultant? Or how can I provide financial services? And I fit that bill. I also did not start that way as a child, but actually one of my degrees is in psychology. So I went to graduate school in medical clinical psychology. And interestingly, perhaps, right before I went to grad school, I had done some temporary work just trying to make a buck before I went to school. And I found myself in an RIA, just by happenstance, basic filing and grunt work, right? As I got ready to leave that firm to go to graduate school, I'll never forget the president of this small firm here in Atlanta, 150 million-ish RIA in Atlanta. She said, when you get done trying to save the world, give me a call. I think you might enjoy this version of how we help people. Well, that was prophetic because I went to grad school and did that for a while, but Family Matters brought me back home. I had to leave that program. So there I am driving my U-Haul truck across the great state of Alabama to get back home. And I called, her name is Liz Nolan, a wonderful woman and a mentor. And she said, and by the way, one of the very few presidents of RIAs at the time, you can imagine, because this was 25 years ago, she took me under her wing, got me a license, taught me the business. Of course, from there, I became an advisor. After that, things started rolling fairly quickly, right? I left that firm to go to Fidelity and learn a little bit about the RIA space and how to consult with multiple models. Here I thought as a youngster that there was one way to manage an RIA, and now I know what we all know, which is if you've met one advisor, you've met one advisor, right? So got that education early on, and then I went over to a firm called Triad Advisors. Triad is a independent broker-dealer and RIA, and I was given the privilege to build out their advisory platform. So it was one of these things where I knew the advisory business. The broker-dealer world was, at the time, relatively new. I guess you could say I was hybrid before hybrid was cool. And then we built out that platform not too many years ago. A colleague of mine and I started a second company in that same umbrella where we served advisors and we through the RIA custodians, Schwab, Fidelity, then TD Ameritrade. And what do you know, but we were purchased by one of the big boxes out there, and the opportunity to serve the same way we had changed, it morphed, and I was able to find this wonderful opportunity with Strategic Blueprint, which is a modestly sized RIA here in Atlanta. And the intent here is to grow and to help advisors grow and realize their entrepreneurial dreams, which I'm sure we'll talk more about.
Thank you. So how long have you been at Strategic Blueprint for?
Listen, I'm so glad you asked, Mike. I am on day 39, I think, today. So I know everything. I got it all figured out. If I were to pan over, you would see a whiteboard that is just filled with plans and dynamics. But I'm happy to share with you what has been built with Strategic Blueprint, what the vision was when they started it, and where we're going from here. And I think your listeners will find it at least entertaining.
Yeah,
so,
I was going to say.
Oh, go for it, Ashley.
Yeah, fire away.
Yeah. So tell us, what was Strategic Blueprint's vision by bringing you on board 39 days ago?
Well, you're getting right to the heart of it. So the whole point is growth. So my title is Chief Growth Officer, and I think you're going to see that title come up more and more often in our industry for those that are intentionally trying to grow. Right? There's passive growth. There's we'd like to grow, and then there's intentionally building kind of from a pyramid style, ground up effort to grow the business, and that's the intention for Strategic Blueprint. So bringing me on really is little to do with me and a lot to do with the vision that was put together for the firm by Julie Sullivan, the president, and the president of our holding company and our founders. The whole idea here is how can we help people grow their entrepreneurial businesses? And by doing so, grow our business ourselves. So the infrastructure for Strategic Blueprint is sound. The model is right for the time and the industry. We're not new. Strategic Blueprint's been around since 2017 in and of itself. We're part of a group of companies I'm happy to share with you that have been around for over 20 years. So we're these veterans in the industry that are just now really making a strategic decision to grow the business and to put effort into growing this side of the business.
And can you elaborate really for our audience, what is Strategic Blueprint's model?
So we are an RIA that is designed to support entrepreneurial independent advisors that want to have their own brand, that want to do their own investment management or leverage a third-party investment management, that want state-of-the-art technology, but do not want to become the world leader in fintech on their own time, do not want to figure out the complexities of the DOL and or FINRA and or SEC. They are looking for a strategic partner to help them with that. So what Strategic Blueprint is fundamentally, the industry is calling us different things these days, right? Aggregator. Some people call firms like ours strategic acquirers. Ours is not an equity model. It's where we want to support advisors under our RIA, where we're providing technology, operational support, consultative support, and practice management to help those advisors realize what they want to do with their advisory business.
So in growing to where the Strategic has grown to thus far, and AUM's not often correct when we get public information on it. It says around $2.5 billion, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just a little bit north of that. That's not entirely off.
And how is that growth built since 2017? Has it been mostly inorganic growth? You said that you guys act as kind of more of a back end for advisors and maybe smaller RIAs that bolt on to you guys for your back end support, technology, and operational support.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. So the term, I love our industry. We love to latch onto terms, and then everyone uses them differently, right? So for the sake of this conversation, I'll say we've grown organically, meaning the advisors that we're attracting, we're not purchasing those books. We're not investing in their equity. We're letting the advisors own their own equity. And then we're just bringing them in and providing the services, right? Those advisors in turn are also, not only are they gathering individual clients, but they're occasionally recruiting other advisors. So in that sense, it's organic growth. In the old days, we would say organic growth was just same store sales, right? Advisors that are continuing to grow and gain additional wallet share. Now, I think that because the industry has shifted in this kind of diametric way of either buying businesses or growing businesses, we've chosen to grow businesses.
Thank you.
Very interesting. So, what the vision when it firm first opened, and tell us now what the vision is, where you guys are headed.
Well, so if I take a step back, the impetus for the business really came from the marketplace, right? Advisors, it's not, I find it interesting when people say the trend towards advisory. The puck has been squarely in the advisory side of the rink for quite some time. I think what now is starting to become more evident is there is a regulatory pressure that makes it cost prohibitive, time prohibitive, mental sanity prohibitive to manage your own RIA up to a certain scale. And so the impetus for Strategic Blueprint was to solve for some of those issues. The fintech moving so quickly and so interestingly as to put the Joe public advisor behind the eight ball in trying to spend all their time and energy. So between compliance and fintech, I think that was the genesis of the firm in and of itself, is trying to solve for that problem for advisors who otherwise, historically, may have started their own RIA, which wasn't terribly difficult if you go back about 15 years, maybe a little longer. Now that's become a lot more onerous. So the answer to why we were born, Strategic Blueprint, was born to solve the problem the advisors put in front of us based on what was happening in the industry. Where we go from here is just as interesting, probably more so, because now there are a lot of people in that game. There are a lot of broker-dealers trying to get in that game. There are a lot of acquirers trying to get in that game. And the question becomes, how well will they do those things? And I think it remains to be seen. I think their intent will matter. Our intent is to do something that sounds a little bit old-fashioned. Our intent is to serve. And I think if you start with the concept of our intent is to help advisors help clients, and it sounds hokey, and it is, but if you take that concept and watch the direction of where we're going with the firm, you'll see our intent is to separate ourselves very much from what I call the big boxes, right? The big names, the acquirers, and say, if you want that business model, lots of resources, tons of money being thrown at it. There's certainly huge opportunity for the right advisor. But for the advisor that wants to be entrepreneurial, that wants true independence, that wants to run their business their way, I think that's going to get real difficult for one end of the spectrum. And I think that's the sweet spot for those of us that really have a servant's heart and have a servant's business model. So our intent is to really hone in on those types of advisors that are in growth mode, that are attempting that put service first. That isn't to say they're not building equity. That isn't to say they're not looking to monetize their book at some point or create a smart succession plan, but that their primary energy is around how can I build a service business. And I think that's something you're going to see an awful lot from Strategic Blueprint around.
And so building on that, Michael, with your focus, on providing unbiased financial advice and consultative advice to these advisors, how do you manage to differentiate Strategic Blueprint in a competitive market that you mentioned? What strategies have been instrumental in retaining these advisors and clients?
Well, good question. It starts at the beginning with knowledge base, right? Speaking the language of the advisor is critically important. I mentioned earlier, we all use similar terms, but sometimes we use them differently. Finding that common grammar in and of itself is proven to be a differentiator. It doesn't matter to me what you call hybrid or what the next person calls hybrid, so much as when you and I are having a conversation, we're speaking about the same thing at the same time. Do you have your own RIA? Don't you? Do you use a custodian that is an RIA only custodian or a broker-dealer's clearing firm? As long as we get to the same common ground of what we're trying to accomplish, I think that builds confidence. It builds trust. And I think largely that has been a differentiator for Strategic Blueprint, is a little bit of that knowledge base. Not to disparage others, but some folks are still very focused on the FINRA world, focused on FINRA rules, focused on the broker-dealer mindset. And we do have a magnificent sister company that is a broker-dealer. But because we have that, we're able to distinguish that dialogue and be able to speak more directly to the advisors about what's important to them. That's the first differentiator. The second, doesn't sound like it from how much talking I'm doing, but is our listening. We get a significant number of our ideas or our next steps from the advisors. I joke all the time, and I've found a great family here at Strategic Blueprint, that I haven't had an original idea in 25 years. I just listen to everyone else's and then pull them together. And that is a huge differentiator. Rather than having the agenda of the firm dictated, and then we'll see what advisors might fit into that agenda. Again, very service focused, looking to find out what the advisors need, kind of platform, kind of services, kind of products, what kind of advice, and then going about providing those things. So I think intent matters.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like that.
And so, as the chief growth officer, your job is primarily business development.
That's an aspect of it, for sure, Mike. And that's certainly what a lot of people would point to. I think it starts a little bit more from the ground floor. Again, I think you're going to see more chief growth officer titles start to crop up because if you do what you've always done, you will not get what you've always gotten based on what's going on demographically with the clients, what's going on from a regulatory perspective. There are too many moving parts. So the first thing a growth officer needs to understand is what are the core competencies and really hone in on those, right? And so that's step one, is taking those core competencies and expanding on them. Ashley asked a good question about differentiation, making sure our value proposition is clear, is poignant, and is really well supported, rather than trying to be all things to all people. So step one from a growth officer is to continue to build out the strengths of that core competency, right? What additional solutions might we offer? What additional products might we make available? What additional advice can we provide? That's the first part of growth. The second part of growth is our business is about our current clients, our current advisors. Serving them is job one. So we find that if we do that, just exactly like in the advisor's business, if they're serving their existing clients extremely well, what do you know? But you'll start to find all the different tools you might need to serve additional clients. I heard in a recent podcast, one of your advisors said something. He talked about the importance of relationships. If you serve your clients well, they'll want to tell their friends. 100% correct. People are pack animals. Advisors too are pack animals. And so we will gravitate towards those that we feel good about, that are similar to us, that have a mindset like we have. So entrepreneurs seek out other entrepreneurs and so on. So as a growth officer, my next job is to grow out the existing advisors, help them grow their businesses, same store sales, it would be the industry term. And then the tertiary piece is business development. Go out and find other advisors and make sure people know who we are and that we're open for business. And I think my opinion is growth. If you're not growing, you're dying. I think whether it's a little bit of growth every year, depending on your firm, or a very intentional growth like we're going for, I think you'll find that if you don't intentionally try to add new folks to your business, you'll atrophy.
Right.
So speaking of that growth, where do you guys see yourselves in, let's say, 5 years from now?
So good question. So in five years from now, I expect Strategic Blueprint should be well over the $5 billion mark. And I can promise you this, we'll hit $5 billion and I will immediately set a $10 billion mark. That may take closer to 7 years. Once we get there, I would say it'll be interesting to find out. I look forward to all of us speaking again, because I don't know how much scale and benefit you get to your clients in going significantly beyond that mark. So maybe 10 to 15 billion, it allows you the leverage you need with strategic partners and everything. But beyond that, I am not convinced that a $50 billion RIA serves anybody but the owners of the $50 billion RIA. Stand to be corrected, but as we're as our growth increases, we intend to double here in the next few years, and then probably start setting higher goals immediately following that.
Really cool.
Exciting stuff. So looking ahead, what do you see as the future of wealth management? What future of the industry in terms of technology, innovation? You talked about, these terms that are being used and all these different models that are coming up. What do you see as the future here?
Sure. Well, I think the more advisors can become bionic, the better off they will be. And so to the extent that we can help them do that, I think that is the role of a financial service provider to other financial service providers. I think there'll be a tremendous opportunity to help advisors integrate technology into their very personal relationships with their clients. I know we've been able to successfully do that with some of our current partnerships with our technology providers in helping those advisors use the technology to better connect, better communicate, better visualize their clients maybe when they can't be around, and touch them more frequently and with more personalized touches. So I think, remembering my long ago psychology background, I think the trend that we've all seen in behavioral psychology of behavioral finance, I think you're going to continue to see that need for connection, that need for the end investors to have a very personal connection with their financial advisor. And as wealth builds, I think that becomes critically more important as trust is more necessary, as skepticism of other players in their life becomes a little bit more to the forefront. Clients really need that trusted advisor to be able to sift out the sales folks, sift out the sycophants, to sift out some of the folks that may be not acting in their best interests. So I think technology gives us a tremendous opportunity to provide that.
Absolutely. And on the investment front, what investments and sectors are you most excited about right now? Anything you see for, the next wave of wealth creation?
I'll be a little cagey about that, only because I leave that to our advisors to decide what the best investments are going to be for their clients. But I'll say from an industry perspective, there are some really interesting things starting to emerge that I think have become a little bit politically charged, which is fascinating to me, strictly from a behavior science perspective. But there are aspects that it will enhance advisors' ability to manage money. And I'm thinking specifically of the quant models, right? Of the direct indexing, for lack of a better way to put it, to enhance tax awareness and tax management. While somehow ESG has become a very hot topic of what is and what isn't ESG, whether it should or shouldn't be involved in your investments, I think the fact that we can get smarter at that through some of these quant models and align people's values with their investments. If we try to extract ourselves from ESG, but specifically in some of the current hoopla around it, and aligning people's values with their investments, I think that is something that's going to have a great deal of traction. I do expect that to morph here in the next few years to look a little different than it does today, and to be a little more transparent than it is today while we're at it. And then you get some of these interesting new product lines. I read just in the Wall Street Journal today that there's what do they call it? Boomer candy. They've got these ETFs now that are specifically designed to try and mitigate volatility in a way that maybe they didn't before. So it's fascinating what's coming out and seeing what traction may lie ahead. I think the best thing a firm like mine can do is make options available and let thoughtful, intelligent advisors and their clients come to the conclusions of what fits best for them, and give a wide range of solutions to be able to diversify and put that together. I think the firms that try to pin down into a particular niche or fail to address portfolio diversification instruments like alternative investments or some of these more interesting, modern, cutting edge solutions, which are technology driven, I think they do so at their own peril. So I think that's going to be something that's, I won't speak to the specific sectors, I don't know what's going to happen immediately prior to or after the election, and anybody that tells you otherwise is selling you something. But I do think there is opportunity for all of our advisors to capitalize on the solutions that can mitigate downside and capitalize on upside, and they are changing every day.
Thank you for that.
And so let me ask you what you feel about the real estate market, residential and commercial. What are your thoughts there?
Just buy. No, I really don't have. Here's what I'll say is advisors that are paying close attention to the instruments that give them access to the commercial markets and to the residential markets right now are being extremely well rewarded for that. I think there's, like anything else, Mike, there's a time and a place for each type of security and opportunity. And I think from a real estate perspective, the COVID wave has now, I think, come to a trough, and we're about to see another rise. And I think the advisors that are paying close attention to that, both on the corporate and on the retail side, I think you're going to find will be extremely well rewarded in terms of returns, but in terms of long-term value.
Thank you. And let me ask you this: with everything that's happened since COVID, given the fact that we've doubled our debt in recent years, I know you don't want to give any predictions on the economy, but sure. I'd love to hear what your economic outlook is.
Well, I'm an optimist, so take that with a grain of salt. Your listeners should take that with a grain of salt. But I without sounding too hokey again, I think I believe in the American spirit. I believe in the concept of ingenuity. And I do think that's the differentiating factor of our country as opposed to other countries. I don't, we're not the greatest at everything in the world, but that's an area. Ingenuity is something that we have absolutely cornered the market. And for that reason, I'm not as bullish on how we reconcile this debt over the next, it's going to take quite some time, over the next 10 to 15 years. I do think we have instruments at our fingertips that will allow us to start mitigating that debt. I'm hopeful, like the rest of us, that we do something about attempting that because the piper has to be paid down the line. And I have 3 children, and I'd like them to not be paying for our decisions now. But I do think we have the ingenuity to overcome even this tremendous debt that we've dug ourselves into, and arguably for the right reasons, and arguably it could have been worse. But we're going to have to start addressing it. We're going to have to start addressing it in the very, very near future. I don't think we have a lot of time to waste. There's a sense of urgency on that. But I'm optimistic. I think there's plenty of opportunity for us to mitigate that debt in a thoughtful way, probably through investments, probably through some nationalized investments that would have to be bipartisan, which is almost impossible. But again, I'm optimistic.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Interesting times ahead for sure. Michael, before we close out our conversation today, I want to ask you, what advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs, the next generation of financial advisors that are really looking to make their mark in the industry?
Mm-hmm. My first piece of advice is to listen well. There are lessons to be learned from the mistakes that have been made by the folks around you, by the folks that have gone before you, and there are lessons to be learned by the successes. Take them in equal measure. I don't, as a baseball coach, for example, I'm not going to harp on the one thing you did wrong. I'm going to harp on the things you did well and try to get you to repeat that. That doesn't mean that we ignore the things that didn't go well. So the first thing is to listen well to the lessons that are being taught. The second thing is to practice leadership every day. Practice leadership every day. And sometimes that requires words, but oftentimes it's just your actions, right? So leadership can come in many forms, but the best of all of it is through example, right? So all that you can do to lift other people around you as an entrepreneur, especially as an entrepreneur, the more you lift people around you, the more you will find yourself being lifted. You'll also enjoy the process more than you would otherwise if you're trying to drag everybody along. But if you can lift those around you, you'll find that surrounding yourself with people that are enthusiastic and have a bit of that entrepreneurial spirit, though may not be in themselves entrepreneurs, you will find that your job is more enjoyable. Your success is accelerated by just simply bringing everybody involved and giving them agency. And I think if you practice leadership every day, you'll find those things that you dream about coming true significantly faster.
Beautifully said, Michael. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us, and thank you for sharing your insights with us and our audience. We're really excited to see what is ahead for you and Strategic Blueprint here in the future.
Thank you very much, guys. This is what matters.
Exactly. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the What Matters podcast. Remember, success is not what you achieve. It's about the impact you make along the way. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.